everyone, and welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. In today's episode, we have the truly remarkable and the legend Marc Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix. I'm humbled and still pinching myself that I was able to sit down with Marc, and it all literally happened within 24 hours. I got wind that he was doing a couple of keynotes here in South Australia, and I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I asked if while he was here in South Australia, he'd love to be interviewed on the #1 South Australian business podcast, to which he agreed, and 24 hours later, he was sitting in our studio. So Marc isn't a man who really needs an introduction, but briefly, he, along with Reed Hastings, started Netflix back in 1997, which now has 231 global paid users across 190 countries, amassing in $32 billion in revenue. Since his time at Netflix, he's also been a coach, mentor, and investor to many startups across the globe. So in this episode, we explored the essence of entrepreneurship, the critical importance of learning through experience, and how Marc believes the behaviors of courage and grit are fundamental when navigating the ever-evolving landscape of business. We'll hear firsthand how Marc and Reed came up with the revolutionary idea of Netflix, and the powerful lessons that Marc has learned throughout his incredible journey, including how Blockbuster turned down the idea of buying Netflix for $50 million. We also discussed the significance of a strong company culture and the delicate balance between business success and personal fulfillment, and the undeniable value of embracing decision-making in uncertain situations. Finally, Marc reveals his thoughts on the true essence of success and offers a sneak peek into his book, which provides a realistic portrayal of starting and growing a company. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Marc Randolph. Welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. Today, I'm very, very humbled to be sitting in front of Mr. Marc Randolph. Thank you for joining us.
It is my pleasure.
So for those who may or may not know, I'm almost certain everyone would know of a little company called Netflix, who Marc was a co-founder for. As you may or may not know, the business has now grown to $31 billion in revenue, 231 million global paid users in over 190 companies. And I found out a stat, 15% of the world's internet bandwidth, which I thought was really an interesting point. You're a serial investor to startups, and some of those have gone on to be extremely successful in their own right, coach to entrepreneurs. You travel the world in keynote speaking. Here today, currently speaking at South Star and the Fearless Females International Women's event tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. It really is. So much interesting things going on here.
There is. So just to round up, now, this is the most impromptu podcast that we've both, I think, ever done. You've done no research. I've had minimal time to pull together. Normally I spend a couple of weeks pulling together research. So we're going to sort of go off the cuff a little bit here, which is really interesting. But I want to kind of start back and date back to just who was Marc before the world of Netflix, and how did you come to be the man that you are today and sitting in front of us?
Well, the first thing is that I didn't start Netflix until I was 38. Yeah. So this was not something I dreamed of in my university dorm room or something like that. So I had been an entrepreneur for a long time up to that. Netflix was my fifth or sixth, depending how you count them, startup.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this pretty much my whole life. I didn't do it because I read a book about it or because I had some dream growing up about entrepreneurship. I've just always kind of been one of those guys who's kind of compulsively driven to fill holes that I see, to see things that are broken and want to fix them, or things that could be done better and want to be the person who provides that better. And it's one of those one thing leads to another type careers. You
talked about the book. I am interested because I've heard you talk numerous times. I've watched YouTube videos and all the above, and I think it was one of a recent tweet that you did or something along the lines that you can't learn entrepreneurship through a book. And then you've just mentioned that there again. What's your thoughts around the world of entrepreneurship and learning and reading? Do you think that the books you've written your own book as well. Do you think that books play a part? I'm a big reader. Do you think books play a part if you're immersed in the world of entrepreneurship?
Sure, they help. So I don't want to say don't read anything, because you certainly can learn a lot from books.
Yeah.
And learn a lot about entrepreneurship from books. The misconception or the wrong belief is to think that you can learn how to do it from reading a book.
That's true.
Because the tweet really was that, thinking you can learn entrepreneurship from a book is like thinking you can learn how to play golf.
That's right, yes.
From a book.
Yes, correct.
You can study all the swings you want. You can read books about strategy in golf, but you've got to get out and hit balls.
Yeah.
And you've got to get out in the course and see what it brings you. Otherwise, you're hopeless. And entrepreneurship is the same thing. Yeah. You have to do it. Yeah. I encourage everyone, don't jump right into some big company. If you have an idea, just try it. And just the little things you learn are the exact same things you'll just do writ large later on.
It's what I find being an entrepreneur myself. It's the living with the ambiguity. It's making decisions with no control. Like, it's all the above that actually builds the resilience piece, I guess, is what you're talking about from an entrepreneurship point of view.
Not just the resilience, you have to learn to become comfortable with making decisions when you have no idea in advance what the outcome is going to be. I mean, my definition, just to expand what you said, is that entrepreneurs are people who are comfortable making a decision based on ambiguous or contradictory or incomplete information. And that's very, very hard for a lot of people. Nobody wants to be embarrassed. No one wants to try something that they're not sure in advance it's going to work. No one wants to be laughed at. And what entrepreneurs have to do is realize you can take these risks, you can try things, and when they don't work, the world doesn't end. And if anything, the thing that I've gotten good at after doing this for 4 decades is I am completely fearless now. I know there's going to be almost no bad consequences that I can't deal with from trying something. And I've learned that the value of trying it, the feedback I get is so unbelievably powerful and unexpected that it pays off every time. That's the kind of thing that you learn by practicing.
Yeah.
And to think that someone goes, I'm going to read some books, I'm going to study, be an entrepreneurship major at the university, and then come out and go try and raise money, start a company is just laughable.
Yeah. The fearless part, I want to touch on that. I've been doing this 5 years now. Been growing the business. We're doing quite well. Brand's doing quite well. I want to know when is going to be the day that I stop becoming fearful of making decisions. I think entrepreneurship in its own right, you can have the best day and worst day in the same day, right? And there's these ups and downs that you kind of float with. You've often, and a lot of your teachings and on a lot of your YouTube clips and your website and all the above, you've spoken very much about failing and making bad decisions or there's no sort of real bad decision, is there? And you fail quickly and you get through it and you learn and you iterate along the way. When does one become comfortable with the failure and the making? You said you had 5 businesses there. Did you fail those before, or how did it all work for you?
But it's not like one business is one swing, and on my 4th swing,
that's right.
It's more that each of those businesses involved 10,000 different decisions. And what happens is, let me back up for a second. So this is going to sound completely crazy, but I'll bring it home, I promise. So listen, automotive safety has unbelievably better in the last 20, 30, 40 years in terms of what an automobile can do to protect its occupants, better steering, better brakes, all those things. And you'd think that would make the death rate go down, but it doesn't. What it does is people just drive faster.
Yeah.
That's what happens for an entrepreneur, is that your comfort with decisions, you're going to find a place where you're, oh gosh, this is a little uncomfortable. That little uncomfortable never goes away. What happens is the decisions at which you feel that become more and more and more consequential. Yeah. So listen, maybe the first thing you start, and my first ventures, if you want to call them that, were things I did at the university, where the consequences in the scheme of things were pretty modest. I was not going to starve. I still had a place to sleep. I still was going to get fed. But they were very, very scary nonetheless. And each time you graduate a little bit, you still have that same feeling of, but you're taking bigger and bigger swings. And so eventually when you're taking a swing with a company like Netflix, or even bigger swing that I took with Looker, it's the same feeling. It's just a much, much bigger risk.
I love that. If you look back at year one to some of the decisions I made and the fear that I felt, I would look at them now and probably not even recognize them. Do you know? So it's the iterations and the growth. I think
there's so many examples of that. We could talk a lot about it. It's which is why I say you can't learn it from a book.
Yeah.
Because you need to find the groove. You need, and it's not there's one skill. It's not like there's decision-making skills.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. I mean, for example, especially early on, you were trying to convince people to come join you.
Yeah.
You were going to say, come work for me, leave your job, which pays better, which has more security, has better benefits, and come join me on this mission. We're really going to change the world.
Yeah.
And that's an unbelievably hard skill right there. But you can learn those skills early on too. I mean, these same university things that I was doing, these clubs, these publications, all these things that I started, I had to convince people to come and work for me when I couldn't pay for them, when they could have been out drinking and chasing women or whatever the case was. And that exact same skill is the one you use every single day 30 years later.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by practice, 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 practice. The best time, to start was 20 years ago, if you want to be entrepreneurial. Second best time is now.
I've heard a quote. It was, the number one hardest thing to do is to start. The number two hardest thing to do is to not quit. So
I like that. That's good.
So just to elaborate on that and understand your thoughts, at what point through your career, or even when you work with entrepreneurs, when do you realize that you're banging your head up against the wall every single day and this is not going to change? Like you need to call a spade and say, actually, this business is not working. I'm going to move away from it. It's a really tough decision. We see a lot of entrepreneurs who keep striving. Do you encourage to continue to strive and continue to learn and continue to iterate and continue to make bad ideas and turn them into good ideas? Or do you actually encourage people to walk away when things are just not working?
I challenge the whole premise of that question. I think that's a false question. I don't think any entrepreneur ever really thinks that way.
Okay.
I mean,
that's true.
It's not an unusual question. I get asked that all the time. How do I know when to quit? And the answer is you never quit. And it's not like you ever think about quitting. You quit when they pry your hands.
That's right.
As the expression goes, you can have my gun when you pry it out of my cold, dead hands.
Yeah, correct.
But it really is that way. And I don't know anyone realistically who's an entrepreneur who has said, this is too tough. I'm done.
I'm going to walk away.
Things fail. They run out of money. You realize your product is going backwards. And then you try and find a safe landing for it, but you're still trying to salvage it up to the very last minute. So I'm the worst person to ask for advice about when to give up. I've just never seen someone give up that I can use that as a model for understanding it.
To be honest, you're right. If you're in, you're all in, right? I mean, you've made the biggest decision is to step out on your own, like you said, encourage people to come in. Yeah, why would you?
I'm not. Your pithy little quote there was a great one.
Yep.
It really is courage to start and grit to continue.
Correct.
And I'm not saying it's easy to continue, but mustering the courage to continue is different than trying to decide when to quit.
When to quit. Beautiful. So let's just talk back around the start. So you're in this world, and the idea of Netflix comes about. We've all heard the story. It's a great story of the overdue fines and all that you got from that you and Reed got from the blockbusters and of the world, and then the commuting to and from Silicon Valley. The two of you come up with this idea. What happens then? How do you put it into process? And at that point, were you thinking, actually, this could change the world?
No, not a chance. And it's not as. I mean, listen. There are stories. For example, the whole late Fiona movie thing. It's
Hollywood story.
It's a Hollywood story. And I understand it because what everybody wants is the epiphany story.
Correct. Yeah.
They have this romantic vision that what entrepreneurs do is walk down the street and an apple falls in their head and they invent gravity or whatever it is, or we
figure out gravity.
We get in the bathtub and
You fall
eureka.
over, and you've come up with a flux capacitor. Is that
Exactly. Or that you get a late fee in a movie and boom, Netflix springs forth fully formed. It doesn't happen that way. You have to be looking for these ideas. And yes, Reed Hastings and I came up with the idea for Netflix in a commute, but it was just one of 100 ideas that I pitched him on those commutes.
Yeah.
The idea of finding the idea that has enough resonance to want to continue with it is work. And it was just, but it's not just thought experiment work. What we were doing in the car is we'd start off with banging them around intellectually, but we would not waste a lot of time on that because fundamentally that doesn't tell you much at all. Almost anything that passed the very first test of being intellectually sound had to be validated by trying in some way to collide it with a real person. I mean, the whole that Netflix story is in the car, all of a sudden mid-ride, realizing that that DVDs might allow us to solve a problem we had given up on several months ago.
Yeah.
But turning the car around and saying, what can we do right now to give us a sense of whether this idea has any validity or not?
What did you learn about yourself through those early years? You start the business, the hustle and bustle, the continuous effort, the mistakes, the learnings, all the above. What did you learn about Marc Randolph in those early years of that startup?
There's so many lessons. I'm struggling to come up with the best one. The most important lesson is that I really like this. And that's not just a casual observation. It's this feeling that I've found something that fulfills me. And I think most people are constantly searching for this thing. And we're fighting against preconceptions of what should fulfill us. You should be a lawyer. You should be a doctor. You should be successful. You should make a lot of money. And certainly when I started as an entrepreneur, none of those things were true. It was kind of a illusory thing for people who couldn't hold a job. But coming to the realization that I really enjoy this and that actually I'm pretty good at it, that combination of things was a really big insight for me. The second big realization that was profound was that in some ways it's an addiction that I have to be really careful about. Because like an addiction, it can take over your life. Yeah. What you have to do is say, how do I manage this?
Yeah.
How do I become a successful entrepreneur without losing the things that make me whole? Right. My hobbies or my family or my friends, those sort of things. Yeah. And I learned the first one probably in my mid-20s, and I learned the second one probably late 20s, early 30s. These are not like easy things to learn, but I look back and now and go, wow, those were important for both of those. Really, are what shaped the rest of my life.
Yeah. So similar position. I'm 38 years old, starting a business, have a family, 2 young children. I constantly grapple with putting my visions and my wants, needs, desires for this business with the love and time that I want to spend with my family. How did you manage that concoction when you were going through the early years?
So I screwed it up pretty badly at the beginning. Yeah. So I'll confess to that. I was so passionate about it that I was spending all the time working. I mean, I was working 7 days a week. Yeah. I would work staying late. I was going in on Sundays and Saturdays. It was a lot, and not because I had some boss cracking a whip on me. I was so just enthusiastic about what I was doing. But of course, my girlfriend didn't quite see it that way. Yeah. And it kind of dawned on me, maybe with some nudging from her, that this was not a sustainable long-term relationship. And right about then, I decided I have to figure out a way to solve for this apparently unsolvable problem. Yeah. And so my quick answer is that I decided it was important. Yeah. which is usually the root of everything, and that it was not something I would just solve casually. I mean, I'm a planner. You know, I think through very carefully. One of my mottos is, if you don't know exactly where you're going, you're unlikely you're going to get there. And I go, I'm going to figure this out, and made it really, really important. I mean, there's a famous, I shouldn't say that. I've told the story a number of times about how one of the things I did was we had this Tuesday night, date night, where I'd leave the office at 5 p.m. I mean, sharp. And as you probably know, I'm not sure how it is here, but that's like leaving at lunch, essentially.
That's right.
And but I was religious. You know, listen, if there's a crisis, we're going to wrap it up before 5. Yeah. If you have to talk to me, we're going to talk on the way to the car. And I'm just going to do that. And listen, so a lot of nights after that, I'd go back into the office at 10 or 10:30 or 11. But that was carved out. And there's a lot of other things that I did to try and make that, make it work. And it's what's not hard at all. It's not easy. But looking back, I mean, with all complete sincerity, it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of. Is that not just the companies that I've had, which have been really successful, I'm proud of that. But I'm especially proud of the fact that I was able to do all that, and I'm still married to the same woman. And my kids, and I have 3 kids, you know, we've grown up knowing me, best as I can tell, liking me, that I've had a chance to get out and pursue the hobbies. My life's even harder here because I have the family, but my hobbies and stuff is I'm an outdoorsy guy. You know, I'm going backcountry skiing and mountain biking and kayaking and surfing, and these are not the stuff you squeeze in between your 11:30 call and your 1 o'clock meeting. Right. You've got to plan for them. So I did. So I do have some advice for you, though. There's another story. Hope you can handle this one.
I love a story.
I, early in my career, right about when I was probably your age, maybe a little bit younger, I was an expat that was living in France. And I was running international marketing for a big software company. So I was visiting our European offices almost every day. So I get in the car, I drive from my apartment, I drive into the airport, fly to Copenhagen, come back to Paris. Next day, fly to London, come back to Paris. Next day, fly to Milan, back to Paris. So I was on the plane a lot. And because of me and because of Paris traffic, late a lot. And so finding yourself sprinting through the terminal, you know, frantically trying to make your plane. And one day, as these things happen, I realized this is futile. He goes, for every 100 times I run for the plane, 49 of the times I pull up to the gate and the plane's gone.
Yeah, wow.
The other
50% of the time you're missing the plane.
Yeah, because you're running to the terminal. So the other 49 times you pull up to the gate, and they go, "Yes, we're delayed 20 minutes," and so you're sitting there in your seat, sweating. Well, another wait. Maybe once or twice for every 100 flights did it make a difference between catching it and not catching it. And I vowed then and there I would never run for a plane again, and I never have run for a plane again. I tell that story because what I've also realized is that what your business is very much like that. And I don't know you well enough to assume, but I'm guessing there are probably tons of times you're up really, really late, you have a big presentation, you're going over the deck, you're calling someone up and going, quickly change this. You're doing all kinds of last-minute, detail-oriented stuff because you want it to be perfect. You're running for a plane. Because 100 times, you do that 100 times, 49% of the time, you would have gotten the deal anyway. The other 49 times, that was not going to make the difference between getting the deal and losing the deal. Maybe once or twice. And so once you realize that, you stop running for planes. And that's what frees up a huge amount of time for the other things.
Well, that's like striking a nerve with me. The perfectionism is probably one of those areas that, you know, this is what we're talking about. It's the strive for the extra 20%, not being comfortable with the 80%, isn't it?
That's different, though. I mean, I'm not saying don't have high standards.
Okay.
The skill is recognizing what has to be perfect and what doesn't have to be perfect.
Okay.
And that's that. Listen, that's not something I knew when I was 25 or 30.
No.
But once you recognize, it's taken that millisecond to stop and ask yourself, is this one that I have to do? Like those 5 o'clock meetings on Tuesdays, it's like a miracle. I don't know what did it, but we stopped having crises on Tuesday afternoons. I don't know how that was like some kind of lucky break.
You said you need to learn how to do it. And you need to stop and ask yourself, was there a thought process, or is there something that you will stop and always analyze? Like, how do you know what's important and what's not? Or is it just go with your gut feel? Like, is there a system that you would follow?
Perfectionism. Listen, I get it.
I know you get it.
I'm extremely anal like that. I mean, I'll work on, it's almost an OCD thing. I'll just work on something and work on. I mean, I can't. It's really hard for me to send an email and just hit send. I've got to go back and review it. Yeah. And I'm going, this is ridiculous. This is to the vet. Trying to schedule it, and I'll look at it and go, that's a really good paragraph. And off it goes to the vet. So I get it, but what you realize is that you're doing it because you have the sense that, quote, everything needs to be perfect. And that's the habit to break, is recognizing not everything has to be perfect. It's becoming comfortable with some things not being perfect. And I'll tell you, it's one thing, by everything being perfect, yeah, you're guaranteeing the important things are perfect, but you're driving yourself crazy and driving your people crazy.
It's the inward stress that you're putting on. Yeah,
absolutely right. And so, listen, I'm a man. I make lots of mistakes too. I'm saying but I'm quite a bit older, and I've had multiple companies, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I've recognized my skill set has to be recognizing what are the things that I say, this has got to be right. And I let a lot of other stuff go. And it's how I gain the time to have a life.
So in regards to having a life, if you, there's so much in that.
I could tell. Your head's spinning.
Oh, there is. Because I was going to ask you a question earlier after you talked about how you decided to stop and make time, and you said, I think my kids like me. And the one thing that went through my head is, what would your children and your family say about Marc? How would they describe you as a father, as a husband, all the above? And is it aligned with what you want them to say?
I'm so lucky because I do have that kind of relationship with my kids, and you, as you know, you have so little control over that stuff. You can just do the best you can, and you hope for the best.
Yeah.
I laughed because I don't take a lot of stuff seriously, and so my kids, of course, have picked that up, and so they give me shit mercilessly. So there's a lot of that.
So there's going to be some sarcasm in what they say about their old man.
Yeah. Exactly right. But in all seriousness, I think the thing that they have said, which makes me feel proud, is they go, your superpower, that's the word they use for it, they go, is or love language. They have some new age bullshit way of saying it.
Yeah.
They go, is that you want to help people.
Yeah.
That someone asks you something, you shift into this gear of what can I do to help that person. And that certainly is how I've always been with them. And I think that's a great way for them to perceive.
Beautiful trait. I want to talk, there's one thing that I'm really interested in, and going back into the whole Netflix world. The Blockbuster story is there another famous story of how they laughed when you asked them if there was an opportunity to buy you for $50 million at the time. Now, as we said, $31.6 billion. So, and now they've gone bankrupt. So,
that's revenue, not valuation.
That's revenue, exactly. You're right. And so, did you? And I've heard you say in a few of your talks that you said, right, now we're going to sink them, which is like perfect entrepreneurial attitude, right? Like you've made a bad decision. I'm going to prove you wrong. Was there ever the thought process of a moral dilemma for you putting a company with, all the employees, 9,000 stores. Was there ever that conflict of interest for you? It's like, and how did you deal with that?
With some hesitancy, I'll say no. But not because I'm callous. I mean, I feel terrible in one sense that 60,000 people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
I feel terrible that 60,000 people lost their jobs. But it's not my fault. It's not Netflix's fault.
Good point. Good point.
And it probably isn't even Blockbuster management's fault. It's that the world changes. And if companies can't figure out how to respond to that change, they get replaced by companies that can. Because it's not, what we did was build a better mousetrap. We provided a better solution for customers.
Yep.
And that's the way this works. And they either chose not to or structurally were unable to. And I don't feel sorry for buggy whip manufacturers.
No, I hear your point. I like it. You're true. It's a leadership fault of Blockbuster at the time, wasn't it? That they didn't move with the market.
It's easy for us to say, they just didn't. It's incredibly hard.
Correct. You're right.
I mean,
moving a behemoth.
Yeah, and it's partly courage, but it's partly the entrenched systems. If you're a public company, we'll say, we manage this company with a 20-year horizon, but we better get the numbers every quarter.
Yeah,
it's really, really impossible to do the right things when you're judged on your results every 3 months.
If you could look back at the success, or even just the startup world, the environment, the ecosystem of a startup world, and you put it into a hot pot and you boil away, and the excess that you're left with is the reasons why Netflix was successful. What's in that pot? What's remaining? Why do you think were the core reasons Netflix and Looker and all the startups that you've worked with have been successful?
Two things. Biggest one by far is culture. Culture are common denominators because every company otherwise is different. They solve different problems. They have different markets, different business models. What is consistent with a founder usually is the culture. And certainly I think the culture was a big, big part of Netflix's early success and continued success. I think we learned early on some very entrepreneurial strategies, partly because I was 38 and Reed was 36 or 37. And so we both had a lot of experience in that and knew how to approach the problem in terms of almost anti-Blockbuster things, which was continually willing to walk away from the past in order to get the future. Walk away from the present to get the future right. Rapid iteration, not falling in love with our ideas, all those things. So I think those are probably the two underlying core things which drove the success.
Music to my ears. The consulting company that is SynergyIQ, which I'm the CE for, we work with organizations on their culture and constantly believe that the return on investment of in putting time and effort into your culture and growing your culture and creating a high-performing culture, or the culture that that the community and client deserves, is one that should be front of mind of every leader. So thank you for sort of just pointing that out.
My pleasure.
Why did you decide to move on from the world of Netflix and then go out into your career from there?
Fundamentally, I'm a startup guy.
Yeah.
I love the challenges and the struggles of a really early stage company. I love that figuring out what is the repeatable, scalable business model? What is product market fit? How do you bring together a team of people to solve a really interesting problem? I just love that phase of a business. And 7 years in at Netflix, it was a different scale company. I mean, we had our initial public offering. So we had the cash, we had the reputation. We were able to attract and retain amazingly talented people. As the company gets bigger, the management begins to specialize. And it kind of gradually began to dawn on me that my love for the company was undiminished. I mean, this was my baby.
Yeah.
You know, and I was going to right its wrongs and fight its fights. But at the same time, I began to realize that I didn't really like what I was doing. That the day-to-day stuff was not what energized me. And I guess if I was really going to be honest, I wasn't very good at it either.
From the scale, the pure scale that it was going
I'm awesome
through.
at really early stage companies. When you have 300 or 400 or 500 companies, it's a very different thing. And
You love the chase.
I'm pretty bad. And you realize, well, success is not your title. Success is doing the thing you like doing and doing something you're good at. And if I was really going to be successful, I should get back to doing that. And I did. I mean, and not in a bad way. You know, I'm still very close to the company. I'm still very good friends with Reed and everyone there. But I'm happy as clam right now. I mean, I get to work. I started another company after Netflix.
Yeah.
I get to work every day with the most unbelievably talented and interesting entrepreneurs. I have plenty of time for all my outdoor activities and for my family. I'm really happy. And Reed is really happy. He loves playing this global chess game, and he's exceptionally good at it. Win-win.
Beautiful. Well done. So, in regards to your book, and I'm conscious of your time, so
We can go a bit. We'll go to 6. We'll go to 4:30 if you want.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, in regards to your book, That'll Never Work, which I understand was a quote that was said to you early on in your career and the birth of Netflix. It's been endorsed by Reed. It's been endorsed by someone who I love as well, which is Gary Vaynerchuk. And I haven't had a chance to read it because I didn't have a chance to prepare as impromptu as this podcast was. I've heard it's very entertaining. I've read great reviews on it. Can you talk to us why you decided to write this book? It's because I know there's some questions in it. You know, how do you begin? How do you weather disappointment and failure? How do you define success? So these are sort of really amazing sort of philosophical questions. Is that what your intent was when you wrote this book?
I really had a couple of objectives here. The first thing to point out is I wrote this book almost 15 years after I left Netflix.
Yep.
Because it took me that long to really understand what went on. And more importantly, what my role there was. What succeeded in spite of me? What succeeded because of me? What was brilliant tactical decisions and what was just dumb luck? And I really felt I couldn't write it until I understood those things. But the main two things I wanted this book to accomplish was first to dispel a lot of the myths that surround entrepreneurship. I was fighting against this media frenzy that says this is some glamorous route to riches and fame. I wanted people to see the struggle. I wanted people to see what it was really like, to feel it, to see the fun, but to also see the disappointment.
Yep.
I wanted to create a true picture of what it was like to start and grow a company. But the other thing is what I had realized in the years since leaving Netflix is that, you know, dreaming is not purely the domain of entrepreneurs, that everybody has something they want to accomplish. Maybe not starting a company. Maybe you just want a better job. Maybe you just want to convince your boss to let you start something. Maybe you want to get a better apartment closer to the center. I mean, everyone who's, you know, as Nolan Bushnell said, everyone who's taken a shower has had an idea. But what I realized...
Or sung a song.
What I realized, though, is that all these tips and tricks and secrets that I'd learned over 4 decades as an entrepreneur were not just for entrepreneurship. They were the exact same steps that anybody could take to take anything they wanted to accomplish and make it real. And I think that's really what the book is about.
Thank you. So to answer one of those philosophical questions, which is the one that I grapple with and the one that probably interludes with the family question that I asked earlier, what does success look like to Marc Randolph?
I am the luckiest guy you're ever going to meet. And not because of Netflix, but because of how I consider myself so lucky because of how I get to spend my days. Since I left Netflix, I've kind of recognized that the thing I want to do is help other people not have the same success that I've had, but have the same opportunity to take a shot that I had. I can't tell an early stage company whether it's going to work or not, but I can certainly help you take your best shot at it. I can help convince you that, yes, you can try this. You can do it without quitting your job. You can do it without dropping out of school. You can do it without raising money or hiring a co-founder or learning how to code. That I can do these things and that I have to do these things. And that I get to do these things. I get to work with these really, really talented and fascinating entrepreneurs of all ages, all over the world. That's success. The fact, like I said before, that I was able to do all these things and I'm stayed married to the same woman. That's success.
Yeah.
I could have done, on some of the classical definitions, I could have done better, but I was lucky I never got sucked into that. I didn't do this ever because I thought this was going to be a way to make money, or what never occurred to me. Just did it because these were fascinating problems that needed to get solved. And I went to work every day driven by, this is the coolest puzzle that we all get to sit around a table and help solve together. God, the fact that I've gotten a chance to do that my whole life is the biggest gift I can imagine.
Yeah, kudos. That's remarkable. And thank you for sharing that, because people, myself included, sometimes can get lost in the world that they're playing and put too much emphasis on what isn't important, like you've said.
It's not your fault. It's, the media. I'm not blaming the media. I'm not bashing the media. But just the nature of it, we're bombarded with images that tell us, if you have this, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
If you have this new car, you'll be happy. If this bigger house, you'll be happy. If you have, it's just an ongoing onslaught, and so people lose sight of what really does make me happy. And I grew up in an affluent community, so I was extremely lucky to have all those things. I had my education paid for. I never worried about where my meals or my bed. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very, very much incredibly fortunate that way. But the other unrecognized gift that I got was I got to see all these very, very wealthy, successful friends of my parents who were miserable, whose kids wouldn't talk to them, who they were divorced. And I'm not saying as a 13-year-old kid, I went, whoa, oh my gosh! But what it did was I did not get sucked into this thing. If I only got to live in this fancy town, boy, I'd be happy then, which freed me up to be able to pursue the things that I was curious about.
I'm drinking the same Kool-Aid, man. For me, it's really, how do I do both? How do I be all that I want to be, right? That's the concoction that I'm trying to work out. If happiness was this cocktail of that we could put together, and I'm trying to find that recipe right now in my own life.
Yeah, boy, I could smack you upside the head. Be careful. There's always more. And listen, don't get me wrong.
Yeah. So you're saying don't stick with the one recipe? Is that what are you?
No, I'm saying reflect on where you are, and find your happiness there.
Yeah. So I would almost say that family come first over business. for me, and sometimes it actually affects the quality of business or the quality or the effort that I put in, because I'm like, no, family's first, but I never regret that decision.
So listen, since we're getting kind of personal on this stuff, so you have 25 or so employees, right? So why do you want to be 50? Don't answer me now. Think about it, though. I mean, you probably can afford, your kids can go to school. You probably can take some time off. In fact, if you said growth is no longer part of the equation, I can take even more time off. I'm not.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
But you don't need to necessarily say, "Oh, you're right. I'm just going to stay exactly where I am." But it breaks the thought about more, faster.
What's the chase, isn't it? Right.
I think two things happen. Number one is, with bigger companies and more complexity and growth comes more stress.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you will reach a point, unless you were an exceptional person, where you're not as good at it anymore. And then that's a very, very difficult point.
Yeah. And look, I'm the first to admit that my toxic trait is running after that new shiny thing, right? Like that's. How do you solve for that? Like, how do I manage focus within and amongst all this as a leader within the business?
You know, the answer is I don't know. I'm very, very scared of coming across as some kind of Zen guru. No. I don't. I've solved a bunch of these. Solve is the wrong word. I've worked very hard on saying, this is one of my principles here, and it is true that one of the things. Here's how I'm going to say this. I cannot say, here is how you do it. All I can show you is it can be done.
Yeah.
You can have, in my case, 2 multi-billion market cap companies and still have a life. But I don't know necessarily how to say, here's exactly the steps you have to take. It's enough for me to demonstrate that they're not, life and business success are not trade-offs.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it's about, if we go back to the cocktail or the concoction, it's about everyone finding their own individual drink, isn't it?
There's no question about that. And that's the insight, is not presupposing that you have to do it a certain way. I mean, I counsel, I have this invitation-only entrepreneurial community, and a fair number of people and I speak to them, we're in there every day chatting, and a number of these people are all worried about fundraising. And what I try and say is, ask yourself why you're doing this. Having a lifestyle business is not a bad thing. Most new businesses are lifestyle businesses. When you raise money, you are signing up for something, and make sure you understand exactly what you're signing up for. You're signing up for growth. You're signing up for exits. You're signing up for a lot of things that add a huge amount of pressure to your life, and make sure you do it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing either. I love that game. But it does not mean it's the only way to be an entrepreneur. It's not the only way to be a business person. Years ago, when I was living in Paris, a good friend of mine, his sister was married to a Frenchman. And my friend and I were at their house. We were out in the deck with the husband. Yeah. He had a glove importing business. Okay. And, of course, me and my friend, being, the Americans, were grilling him about all the stuff that we could do. If you consider this, you can make it this bigger. And he had this expression on his face like, what? And I thought it might be translation stuff. And I began speaking slower, and he goes, no. He goes, I understand what you're saying. He goes, I don't understand why you're saying it. Why would I want that? I have this wonderful business. I have a house in Paris, and I have one in the south of France. I'm able to take off 6 to 8 weeks every summer to go there. Why would I want more? And it was really such an interesting moment.
So the question I ask myself is, why not? Like, why wouldn't I want more?
Well, exactly. That's what my friend and I were saying. Yeah. It was self-evident to us. There you go. It was self-evident to us that, of course, you want to keep growing it. Yeah. But it was interesting that he had a different cultural mindset. Yeah. That recognized that with more complexity, with greater size and growth, comes quality of life issues.
Yeah.
And listen, I recognize the irony of a podcast, which is about people largely transforming and growing their businesses and coming on here and going, "Whoa, be careful what you wish for."
Yeah.
But what can I say?
No, this podcast is about finding the path that you want to find.
Yeah, excellent. Then we're in the right place.
Yeah, we are. That's why I haven't got questions about growth and how do I grow. I am interested in about success. I am interested in about creating a world, a better world, and realizing our own visions. But it's how do we do it in a way that suits us as an individual, as a community, as a leader, all the above. So
yeah, life is one of those things that are complicated. I'm lucky that I can now look back and see the path I've taken and go, that seemed to work. But I have no idea if I had been 28 and saying, where do I go, whether I would have come even close to figuring out that this was the way to get there.
So we're going to round up the podcast now. You're off to another event. You're here in Adelaide for a couple of days, but I know you're back to back today. So I want to say thank you so much. And from the bottom of my heart, it actually, I have never been more nervous in a podcast before you came in today. Like Gabriella was telling me, you're following him around. Stop following him around. I really want to say this is life-changing for me personally, and you actually have that effect. You've created something that's changed the world, right? And man-crushing and geeking out and all the above right now is something I'm definitely doing. And I really want you to know this means the world to me, and you've already in the 45 minutes, 50 minutes that we've had a chat had an impact on me, and really proven to me that maybe I am on the right track. Maybe I am thinking about things in the right way, and I'm discovering what is going to be best for me and my family and our team and our business. So I just want to say thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. And you got this.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes I don't know that I do, but what's next for Marc? What does the future look like for you?
It's interesting. You can't turn it off.
Yeah.
All I can do is learn how to control it. I sometimes describe the mentoring that I do as my startup methadone. It's my way of getting my fix of startup without getting dragged into a business where I'm thinking about it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which is one of the issues of being an entrepreneur, as you know. And I'm loving that. And what's fascinating is that being a mentor pulls you into their worlds, besides getting a chance to work with these really great people. But like one of them is working on an AI startup, which is just fascinating. I worked in a robotics startup for a long time. I did blockchain. So it's getting this old guy, it's keeping me current, which is fascinating. I mentioned that I'm working on the entrepreneurial community. I have a bunch of interesting other projects in the works. Yeah, I can't turn it off. I just am figuring out ways with the exact same strategies I used when I was in my late 20s and early 30s. How do I do these things in a way that they are at the right intensity in the right place?
I love it. I did have one question on AI before we go.
Sure.
Does it scare you or excite you?
Excite me.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Some of the stuff that's coming. ChatGPT is one of those areas that's just
sure.
But that's one of the many.
I mean, have you played with some of the AI podcasting stuff? It's just amazing.
No.
Can you go like this, okay? It's like,
uh-oh. Gabs is not.
Well, no, see that. Okay, we'll take 2 seconds to talk about this.
That's good.
It's that people have had so many discussions about, aren't you worried it's going to put people out of jobs and stuff like that?
Well, it's the Elon Musk thing. That's his thing, isn't it? That he's scared that Terminator Judgment Day.
Yes, but that's not what I don't know what he's scared of.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah,
but it's that what it does is remove all the mundane, rote things from the processes.
Yeah,
it's like my father he could whip through a slide rule, you know, and he was really, really good at it because he was an engineer. He was an engineer, and he had to use that, and he could do calculations really quickly. And lo and behold, this new technology called a calculator came along, which meant you didn't need to learn how to use a slide rule. So yes, all the people who were amazing on a slide rule were out of work, but that wasn't a bad thing because it took something you used to take 8 hours to do these set of calculations, and you could now do them in 15 or 20 minutes. Then the spreadsheet came along, and you could do it even more powerfully. And I think what we're seeing with so many, like ChatGPT, is like basically a calculator, but for words. You still have to have creative thoughts. You still have to be able to put things together in a coherent thought process way. But you no longer have to sit at a word processor on Microsoft Word for 3 hours trying to figure out how to structure the paragraphs and the thoughts to make it come across.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing that will free all of us up to do much higher level work, in my opinion. Excellent.
We'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you. If anyone wants to follow you, where can they connect with you, follow you, all the above?
So the best place to start is marcrandolph.com, my website, because there you'll find ways to follow me on all my social channels, which I'm actually pretty active on for an old guy.
Yeah.
But also you can find links to my podcast there, my book. I write a blog post once a week. You can get it via email. So that's ground zero for tapping into my verbal river of disjointed thoughts.
I love it. I'm already subscribed, so I'm keen to jump in. Thanks again. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for all you are doing, and thank you for all that you are going to do. Appreciate your time. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you, and find out more about us at SynergyIQ.com.au. I am going to ask, though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate, and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care, guys. All the best.